Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Feeling and Healing podcast. Today, I am so happy to welcome Valerie Rubin. She is an anxious, not an anxious attachment because I have anxious attachment that was on the top of my brain. She is an attachment expert and also the host of the Anxiety Recovery podcast. So, welcome, Valerie, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Danielle. I'm just so excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. So I know before we were kind of just doing a little chat prior to recording, we were talking about, attachment style. And I shared with you that I was adopted and that,
Mhm.
as my journey to becoming a therapist and just my own mental health journey, I've really, the impact that that moment had in my life was just so profound. And I know you
Yeah.
mentioned pre-verbal, excuse me, what is it? Pre-verbal trauma?
Pre-verbal trauma.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I would love to you maybe for you to maybe tell the audience, what is pre-verbal trauma? Also, for those of you who are, I know we have many listeners, but I talk about attachment style a lot. Since you are the expert, we can talk about that. But yeah, I guess just what is, pre-verbal trauma for those of the people that don't know.
Yeah, so pre-verbal trauma is trauma, separation, inconsistent caregiving, any big T trauma that's happening or little T trauma, right? It's just all of that emotional neglect as well. Any of that from 0 to 3. So, like adoption, like you mentioned with
Mhm.
your own story, that's an example of pre-verbal trauma. And so, how that shows up now as an adult is when your partner maybe waits to text you back. Usually
Mhm.
they text you good morning every day, and today they text you 4 hours later and you're freaking out. You feel this burning in your chest. You can't eat, you can't think, you can't concentrate. You feel like I'm going to die without them because this little child, this baby, it's triggering that suppressed memory. It's triggering
Mm.
that young child that believed, because at that age, separation from my caregiver meant death. And so
Yeah.
literally it
Yeah.
feels like you're dying in present day. And so this is where a lot of trauma bonding can come into play.
Mm.
And when we can attach too quickly to someone, and that can really lead you to having an anxious attachment style, even very subtle ways, like if your parent or parents even had postpartum depression, if your mom had postpartum depression, if your mom was mentally ill, if just anything that was causing you to be misattuned to, or if your parent was just struggling to meet your needs consistently, that's really going to cause a lot of attachment trauma. Or a lot of people, back in the day, they were told to let the baby just cry it out when
Mm.
babies
Mhm.
literally cannot self-soothe. They are fully dependent on their caregivers to regulate
Mhm.
themselves. So all of this, like, this is why some people can be like, I had a great childhood, but I'm still
Mm.
so fucking anxious and scared that my partner is going to leave. Like, the fear of abandonment can look very big, and we
Yeah.
can exhibit these behaviors that look irrational, but it's coming from this young part that just wants safety and love.
No, I love that you brought that up because actually on a previous podcast I was talking to this woman, Brenda Carl. Her episode would be live prior to yours, so this is great timing for it. But about like that, it's so that that text exchange, like you're so right. Like when your attachment style shows up in your communication style, in your relationships, and how you receive things. And I will be the first one to tell you and tell the audience that I had a amazing childhood. Like my adopted
Mm-hmm.
parents welcomed me with open arms. I was unconditionally loved. Like even my extended family, my grandparents on both sides of my family. Nobody in my extended family ever questioned my parents adopting or why they adopted, or there was no resistance whatsoever. But
Mm-hmm.
and as you said, like even though I had this amazing, experience that first 6 months, because I was in, I know, the foster system in Korea for the first 6 months of my
Oh.
life. I know I
Mm,
had like, I know it was like a very safe environment, like even though, but at that time, like, obviously now as an adult, I know it was a safe environment. I was told, I don't remember it, but you're right. Like my instincts and being that little baby, and I
yeah.
didn't know when I was 6 months old that that was going on.
Yeah, because babies cannot understand logic. So that's why
Mm,
when you're really anxious or you're feeling this deep burning in your chest and you don't know why, it's because it's not cognitive. And
mm,
even you said the first 6 months, that is a critical, critical time in development because a baby does not understand it is a separate person than their mother. So
yeah.
it's very traumatic to be separated from your mom during that time. Even I was watching uh this influencer couple, and complete love to them. I'm not going to share like who it
No, it's
was,
okay. You don't
but
have to worry.
their baby was under like 6 months old. I think the baby was like 4 months old, and they went on vacation for a week. The baby, and they literally filmed the baby like reuniting with the parents when they came back, and the baby looked terrified, scared, confused. And so it's like these are just
Wow.
small ways that attachment trauma can be created, and what can create this preverbal trauma and this intense anxiety and like burning in the chest. And for me, I'll just share because now we're on the topic of preverbal trauma. I've been wanting to share it more on different podcasts. Like for me, like I worked a lot relationally on the anxious attachment, my anxious attachment patterns, but it with money, that's where my pre-verbal trauma can get super activated.
Mm,
And like I started becoming a digital nomad in July, and my whole life I grew up in Ohio. I went to college maybe an hour away. And so for me, leaving my family, my friends, everything I knew, awakened this pre-verbal trauma. And what this looked like was freaking out that like I'm gonna run out of money, freaking out that um, no one's gonna help me, that I'm gonna be
mm,
alone, and it would just show up as burning in my chest. And
mm,
I really had to do a lot of attachment work and somatic therapy to slowly heal that part. And it was an extensive process. But even before then, I didn't even realize how closed my heart was. Like now,
mm,
after going through that experience, I've been able to connect and feel more gratitude and help my body to even feel safe in those happy moments. Because before it was like, and this is something with anxious attachment, it's like anything can be ripped away at any moment. The
mhm.
shoe, we're always waiting for it to drop.
Hmm. I will share with you, I think, because as I mentioned, introducing you, I also have anxious attachment.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I mean, probably textbook anybody, after hearing my story about adoption, but, it's very real. And thank you for sharing, that with me, because, and you're right, it's fear based, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
fear of losing money, fear of losing people, fear of
Mm-hmm.
it's a very fear-based attachment style because you're put in this, as you said, you grew up in Ohio, and you were just able to kind of be in your comfort zone. It's when you're put
Mm-hmm.
in situations that are outside your comfort zone. And I love that you also you keep saying too, like, I think listening to your body is
Mm-hmm.
so important, especially in your own healing work, but also just, knowing your attachment style. Like you can say, on paper, right? Like there's so many quizzes out there. I think you can take like,
Mm-hmm.
to learn what your attachment style is. And for those of you who
Mm-hmm.
don't know I'm going to forget, I always forget the last one, but there's anxious attachment, there's secure attachment, there's avoidant. And then what's the fourth one? I think it's the mixture of fearful avoidant.
Yep. Yep, fearful
Yep.
avoidant or disorganized attachment. It's
Yes.
a fun little combo of anxious and
Anxious
avoidant
and avoidant,
parts.
yep.
Yep, and it's like a part of you craves closeness, but at the same time, another part of you feels terrified of that intimacy and closeness. So it's a very like push-pull dynamic, can look like self-sabotaging patterns,
Mm,
and it requires a bit more parts work. It requires just more safety and just compassion. It
yeah.
usually shows up when a parent um, maybe was an alcoholic or a narcissist
Mm,
or just very unpredictable. Sometimes they were great, and then other times maybe were getting abused and things weren't
Mhm.
great. And so of course it would be like the
Ping
child
pong.
is
Yeah.
waiting for their parent to calm them, but I'm also scared of them because they're dangerous.
Yeah. No, that's that. So it's funny you mentioned that too. I know parenting, and I don't, as a potential marriage and family therapist, it is amazing. What our families and the impact our families have on us, because as I said, even your story and my story, like, very, I would say, generally happy, right? I had a pretty but these little nuances within our childhood and how we were brought up and the system we were brought up in, how it impacted us as adults, and how we're still working through kind of these, I'll call them, I don't want to speak for you, but you can speak to them on yourself. But like, I always say, like, these inner child core wounds that we have.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We have so many inner child wound parts. And I will say for transparency, my childhood was not amazing. And
Oh,
I
I'm
kind of, I'm
sorry.
pretty
Oh, I
open. No,
apologize.
no,
I didn't
no,
mean
don't
to.
be sorry. No, don't be sorry. I think a lot of people might look at me and be like, you have such an amazing childhood. And I share a little bit more about, on the podcast, I had a narcissistic father and an
Mm.
autistic brother,
Oh,
and who
wow.
who needed a lot of support and help.
Mhm.
And then my other brother struggled with depression. So
Wow.
for
Okay.
me, I learned, okay, take up as little space as possible, do not share your needs, and
Mm.
suppress, suppress, suppress. And that looked like in adulthood, like a lot of dissociation, and a lot of just feeling unsafe in my body. I had chronic pain for 6 years. I was in my early 20s, and it felt like I was living in a 90-year-old body until I discovered somatic therapy and
Wow.
hypnotherapy to like actually get to all of the suppressed emotions and anxiety in my body. And after doing it for 6 months, using somatics, doing the inner child work and hypnotherapy, the chronic pain completely went away. I also had like deep cystic acne all over my
Wow.
face. So just my body was storing all of it. And yeah, inner child healing is such a critical piece and something that I've learned recently. Um, I'm going on another tangent, but I'm like, I just
No,
have to
go.
share it
That's
because we're
what
talking
this is
about inner
here for.
child healing.
Please. No, I welcome it. Please go for it.
Yes, wonderful. So with inner child healing, this is something that I learned, right? And we talked a little bit about parts work before we
Hmm.
hopped on this podcast. And I'm trained in it. I've done parts work on myself,
Hmm.
like received it. It's beautiful. But what happens is if we're merged with a young part, like say we're an adult, but we feel like we're drowning in our anxiety. We feel completely merged with this 6-year-old. So when we try and do inner child healing, it's like a 6-year-old is trying to comfort a 4-year-old. And so what we want to
Mm.
start to do is adult self anchoring. So it's like,
Mm.
okay, in practicing this almost every day when you're starting out on your healing journey, is okay, even I'm going to bring up a memory where I felt peaceful, capable, feeling proud of myself, um, and just really feeling okay. When I think about this memory, what do I notice in my body? Maybe I
Mm.
notice I feel my posture is open and straight. I
Mm.
feel safe in my body. I feel my feet rooted on the ground. And a lot of trauma survivors or people with CPTSD, they've never experienced that before. Maybe they've never felt proud or capable. So it's even like, okay, I'm going to tune into the energy of a mountain.
Mm.
It's sturdy, it's steady, it's not going anywhere. I'm going to tune into its steadiness, its groundedness. And when I feel the steadiness of the mountain, I'm actually feeling that in my own body. So we're not separate
Yeah.
from that. And then when we can bring that body awareness into our body, we're pairing up the sensation with the memory. That's when we can begin to practice anchoring into our adult self. And this
Mm.
is what becomes even more powerful when we're doing inner child healing because we're like, hey, even if shit goes wrong, I have my own back. But when we're
Mhm.
anxious and merge with these young parts, that is not online. That is not available to
No,
them.
no, 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 no. Yeah, when your inner child parts comes out, or a core wound from childhood, yeah, you definitely are not
Yeah,
aligned with your core
adult
adult
self.
self. Yeah.
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 100%.
Yeah.
I trust me, I've been there myself, and I think too awareness of, I think, and everybody knows on this podcast, I love parts work.
Mhm.
I do part I similar to you, I do my own parts work with my therapist. I'm a big IFS. I'm not trained in
Mhm.
it quite yet, but I know that I would like to. Um do some more trainings with the IFS Institute because it truly is very powerful and just like very profound, very rich
Mhm.
work that you can do with yourself. Because we all have, I mean, we all have what we call like those exiles, right?
Yep.
Those inner children in ourselves that they call them exiles. You want to brush them in the
Push
basement and
them. Yep.
you want to push them down because
Mhm.
but I think when talking about those parts and the work that you've done, you can see how transformative the work can be because it took you
Mhm.
from a place of literally, clearly having body sensations and pain and to
Mhm.
then healing yourself and you're living your life. I mean, and I will say
Mhm.
this too, speaking of trauma, and I'm sure you agree, the body keeps the score.
Mhm.
So as you said, your body was holding all of that trauma, all of that suppressed emotion, and that's what I say to a lot of people, and which is hard in this world that we live in this modern day society that is we're always on. There's how many notifications, how many emails, how many calls, like we're overstimulated in this
Mhm.
system that we're in. So our nervous systems are constantly firing. So we have to be even more aware now as a society of like, all right, like if I'm having an emotion, like it yes, of course, I know in certain circumstances, you don't always have the, opportunity to process it, but I found in my experience, if you just take micro moments in your day to listen to your body, process your
Mhm.
emotions, it will help you in the long run.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, and I even did not a podcast, a post on this on my Instagram the other day, and I talked about like the nuance of feeling it to heal it. Because if you have
Mm.
anxious
Mhm.
attachment or have lived with CPTSD, your emotions feel so overwhelming, or if you're so flooded, we want to help the body to feel safe. So that's where the adult self anchoring comes in.
Mhm.
And that's also we want to first be anchored in
Mhm.
our adult self, um, so that we can help that young part process the emotion. And then it's like another thing is pendulation. So it's like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm going to be with this anxiety in my chest for 15 seconds. What if I can just notice it, be with the sensations, and then I can find a calm spot in my body that feels even 1% more safe, grounded, or neutral,
Mhm.
and then go back and forth. 30 seconds on the calm spot, 15 seconds on the activation, and just going back and forth and just doing that for 5 minutes. And then
Yeah.
as you do that, you're building your capacity to be with it. But until we have those two components, we're either going to become flooded or merged with our young parts, or we're going to start to dissociate because it's too much.
Mm.
Trauma is defined as too much, too soon, too overwhelming. So
Mm.
these practices are really going to help you if your partner is pulling away, if those anxious attachment triggers are coming up. And yeah, and another question that someone mentioned to me was, okay, how do I feel like I'm actually good enough? And
Mm.
and within that, the last thing that's going to help is just telling ourselves, you're good enough. You're
Mhm.
worthy. When if you've had 20, 30, 40, 50 years of experiences in your nervous system and proof that you weren't good enough, your body is going to be like, I'm resisting this. You're fake. Why are you lying to me? Like, what is that? And so so going back to anchoring in our adult self and then starting to really anchor into ways and experiences that help you feel good enough. Maybe that's
Yes.
okay, I'm coloring, I'm spending time with my inner child, maybe I'm playing some music that makes me feel good. Maybe in this moment I feel good enough. Maybe a
Yeah.
friend compliments you, or your boss is um, congratulating you on your promotion. And, it's like these are all small things that can help us anchor into what if I am good enough as I am? We need to do the trauma healing and the parts work and somatic therapy and all of the amazingness. And we need to show our nervous system things are different now through disconfirming experiences.
100% agree with you. And I think it's very unfortunate that we live in a society, both of us growing up in, the United States, that I was
Mm-hmm.
actually just reading a book about this woman that, I love, Jessica Baum. She actually has
Mm,
yep, anxiously attached.
yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
she's a therapist and has this coach, this relationship center down in Florida, and I'm hopefully
Mm-hmm.
gonna meet her in January, which I'm like super excited about. I've kind of like been
Cool.
stalking her on Instagram, and she just came out with her second book, Safe. But she actually
Mm.
mentions, oh God, I just lost my thought process. We were talking about anxious attachment and
Jessica
Jessica
Baum.
Baum, Baum. Serious, I'm sorry for mispronounced her name,
I
but
don't even know if I pronounced her name
yeah.
right, Maddie.
But we were talking, what was, and then she just came out with her second book, Safe. Oh gosh, and what we were talking about before that, and you were talking about how important it is to anchor yourself in your core, in your adult self. It will come to me because I had a point, everybody. I had somewhere where I was going with this. But anyway, for those of you who don't know, just if you have anxious attachment, definitely by anxious. I did feel seen. Oh, this is what we're talking about. We live in a, unfortunately, in a society, and she was even saying in the introduction in her book Safe that, like, even as very young children, we are like, and this is just a normal, I think, parenting response. I don't think parents are doing this to their children intentionally, but we're very proud. Parents are very proud of children that, like, oh, they took their first step before the developmental, like, oh, maybe like they, or they said their words before, like, oh, my child is advanced. Like, there's, even at that such a young age, we are put against this kind of like benchmark to be taught, like, oh, well, I'm not good enough if I don't take my first step by X month. And
Mm-hmm.
that conditioning, unfortunately, like, happens like literally within your it's like very, I feel like it's very subconscious. It's not
Yeah.
intentional, but it's just the society and the system that we live in, that we reward, like, oh, you need to do this in order to be good enough for that. When you are beautiful and whole and lovable just as you are, without any achievement. Like, just being present, just being a human being, like, you are worthy of love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Especially in the US,
Yes.
it's very prevalent of like, and this was a lot of my conditioning, was you need to be very academic, getting your
Hmm.
worth from external achievements. Like my dad was a narcissist, but he was also like autistic. And so
Hmm.
his fixation was almost like other people who were successful.
Okay.
So to me, I learned, okay, I'm worthy and lovable and good enough. And I get praised when I don't normally get praised if I'm achieving, if I'm
Mm.
doing,
Hmm.
if I'm proving. And
Mm.
a lot of American parents can do that. And even just the school system, right? If
Oh,
you are
absolutely.
with
Yeah.
your grades, like these are all very subtle ways that you can be made to feel that not good enoughness.
Yeah, no, and I also too, you mentioned it a couple of times, and if you're willing to share, and please know this is a safe space. You've mentioned your father being, and I'm very curious because I feel, and I don't know if you feel the same way. I feel like the term, and I actually have a podcast about this that I recorded solo like a year ago. I feel like the term narcissist comes up a lot in society today. And
Mm-hmm.
where I like to say is, I come from a very non-pathologizing stance of, like, yes, do I believe that there are narcissists out there? Absolutely. Narcissist personality disorder is in the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic manual we use as therapists.
Mm-hmm.
However, I feel like autism, like anything, it's a spectrum, right? People have,
Yes.
there's narcissism is a spectrum. So then, and I know
Yeah.
there's a ton of, but I feel like in more recent years, and I feel like, and I've even talked to my own therapist about this, it seems that a lot of people, there seems to be like an epidemic of narcissism, or I will reframe as saying a narcissistic tendency is coming out. And I just was curious about, your experience, with having a
Mm,
narcissistic parent.
mm.
Obviously it didn't start with you, clearly.
No. No, it's very interesting, and, like, I guess it's very interesting talking about this because, I think, like, both his parents were very avoidant, and then they also,
Mm.
like, favored his sisters over him, and I think, like, his just wiring was just different. Like
Mhm.
and so I think that just created that. He definitely has a lot of attachment trauma.
Mhm.
And, he used to work for the FBI. And so he has definitely seen things in the FBI, and that's just created a lot of PTSD. And
Of course.
he's never gotten healing for that. And I feel like attachment wise, he's probably like 5 years old. Like,
Wow.
truly. Like, if we look at sometimes how he can act when triggered, or just, it's just very different. Like, and, but like his other two sisters are not like that at all and are completely
Mm,
different. So
interesting.
it's all very, very like unique and different. But yeah, it is interesting. I feel like I don't know if it's like there's an epidemic of them, or just we're becoming more aware of
Yeah.
them, or it's just maybe there is an epidemic because because in that generation they were so miseducated on how to
Mm.
actually attune to children, and like actually educating people on like early development and
Yes,
childhood
and
development
attachment, yeah,
and
and the
attachment.
importance of the relationship with caregiver and child and all
Correct.
that stuff, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I think it's a really interesting question. I don't really know. It could be either or. Like, it could be there's an
Mhm.
epidemic because we're more aware and more people
Yeah.
are going into therapy, or it literally just could be the gap in education for previous generations. Like, a lot of them were taught to let their babies cry it out,
Yeah,
and
like, yeah, you as you
that they
said,
could soothe themselves.
self-soothing, is that's not really a thing, like, yes, like,
Right.
that's what we're told, right? It's like, "Oh, yeah, like, let them cry it out or let them." But yeah,
Yeah.
as you said, babies physically and emotionally, spiritually, whatever, fill in the blank, cannot like, they're not built for that at that age.
No, no,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, but thank you for sharing that perspective, because that's something that, as a mental health professional in practice, in training, excuse me, and
Mhm,
actually I'm seeing clients as well, in my
mhm,
internship, but I find fascinating because I don't like to label people as, oh, that person is a narcissist or that person is this. Do I say, yes, they might have narcissistic tendencies? Yes, I will say
mm,
that, but I do feel like, in my humble opinion, we live, in a very me culture versus a
mhm,
we culture, and,
mm,
I think that, as you said, like, I think that's not, positively contributing to the potential labeling and
mm,
the, because I don't. And also too, I mean, I'd love your perspective too, because I even found in my own personal experiences and experience with clients, it's like you mentioned a great thing, like people that are so I think there's a saying, and forgive me, I'm thinking of, I forget the doctor, the psychologist that said this, but they said something like, all avoidants aren't narcissists, but all narcissists are avoidants. I think that's how it
mm,
goes.
mm,
You know what I
mm.
mean? It's so, and I'm
Correct.
like, and I feel very, I feel like that's an accurate statement. I don't know what your thoughts are or what.
I I definitely agree with that. I
Yeah,
think, and I'll just say this. This might be a very unpopular opinion,
just
and
go
I'm
for
with
it.
you for sure on, like, I come from a very like non-pathologizing lens. I specialize in helping people with anxious attachment, but I've also helped many people who have been disorganized or avoidant. And people who are avoidant, they just have different coping mechanisms
Yes. Yeah.
than people who are anxious leaning. And so a lot of people who are anxiously attached, and this has been myself, so I'll call myself out. We want to point the finger and blame. Oh, the
Mm.
avoidant, they just need to work on themselves. They blah 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 blah. But we were also with someone who was
Mhm.
avoidant leaning, because anxiously attached people, or people who lean more toward anxious attachment, we are hyper attuned, hyper
Mhm.
available to other and unavailable and avoidant to
To ourselves.
ourselves.
Yep.
And so with avoidant leaning people, it's the opposite. And so we just have opposite coping mechanisms. We both have the fear of abandonment, but it switches. And someone, even I was talking about preverbal trauma even with my health coach, and she was like, yeah, like preverbal trauma, that's definitely makes sense if you're anxiously attached, but no, people who are avoidantly attached also have preverbal trauma, or
Oh,
they may have
absolutely.
preverbal
Yeah.
trauma. So it's like we can have all these generalizations. Um, but ultimately, it's like we're all just human beings trying the fucking best that we can. And
Exactly.
like we don't choose our attachment style. We
No,
can
no,
do
no,
the
no.
work. We can do the work to develop more securely attached ways of being and help our body to feel safe and anchor into our adult self. But it's also like it's not fixed. An attachment style is not part of your identity. It can
Agreed.
change
Yep.
and will change if you're doing the body based somatic work, if you're healing these wounds, like daily, day by day when you're doing the work, it will shift.
Oh,
People will
yeah.
come to think the opposite, or I'm just an anxious person. This is just my personality.
Mm,
Honey, I could have told you the same exact thing about myself, but it's just consistent repairing and reparenting and doing that inner work with yourself daily. Like we have neuroplasticity in our brain. Of
yes. Yeah.
course, you can change.
Absolutely, and I say that to people all the time too, is that you are not defined by not just an attachment style, you are not defined by a disorder. You are not that is not part of I that's why I'm very, very, very conscious of when I'm working with my clients as coaching or in therapy of the words of using I am words, I feel words,
Mm-hmm.
I know words because there's a big difference between an I am statement versus an I feel statement or I am
Mm-hmm.
experiencing said emotion. Because once we start saying, I'll just use an example like I am sad, it's like, well, I don't, sadness isn't tied to my identity, but I just
Mm-hmm.
said words out loud that depict that and define me as that. So you have to be very, very careful. And I know we were talking about earlier about like, self-love and you're worthy, you know what I mean? Like what you tell yourself and being kind to yourself. As you said, we are all only human. Nobody gave us a playbook in this life and was like, "Yep, these are all the steps that you take in order to be like the most healed and best version of yourself." No, nobody did that for us, Nobody did
Mm-hmm.
it for our parents either, you know what I mean? And that's
Mm-hmm.
something too that I'm sure you've experienced and as I see it all the time, that and I think I said it to you, it didn't start with you, is that a lot of things that were unfortunately given in this life or at birth, oh, bless you,
Thank you.
at birth is unfortunately inherited from it's generational.
Yes, yes. Oh my God, there's so much juiciness to unpack there. I want to
Oh,
come
I
back to the
know.
generational piece, and then I want to add to the like labeling of emotions. I like to say, and like going back to what we talked about with parts work, it's like, hey, I'm noticing a part of me is feeling anxious. Oh, I'm noticing my shame wound
Mhm.
is getting activated. And
Mhm.
this might sound like very like therapist-y lingo, but it helps you to not like get swallowed in it and have even like 1% more space of like, hey, I'm the observer. This sadness is not overtaking me. And then
Mhm.
with generational trauma and even like pre-verbal trauma, I did a podcast with David Grand, who's the creator of Brain Spotting. And I also specialize in brain spotting, which is another somatic body-based psychotherapy.
Cool.
And so within that, especially with pre-verbal work, and something that we discussed is my family is Jewish. I was raised Jewish, and so for me 98% of my family passed away in the Holocaust. And
Oh
so
my
a few
god.
years ago when the war happened in Israel,
Yeah, yeah.
anti-Semitism has been up by 600%. And it's very increasing the amount of hate that Jewish people receive. And so what ended up happening in me is like ancestral trauma got activated where
Mm.
I was like fearing even being Jewish. And back
Mm.
then, I wouldn't have shared it that I was Jewish on any podcast. I wouldn't share these parts of myself because, like,
Yeah.
what was happening in my head is like I lived in an apartment at that time, and even like doors would shut, and I would be like, oh my God, like someone's gonna break in, a Nazi's gonna take me away. Like, that sounds so irrational, but it was really just waking up this ancestral trauma that was just
Wow.
reactivated. And it's all in the body. And I just remember doing a brain spotting session. I've spoken about this multiple times on my podcast. Is I really did a brain spotting session on this fear of being Jewish, and it was just all in the heart and all of this tension. And I saw in this session, so backtracking a little, my great grandfather, he was one of 11 children. Only
Wow.
him and his brother survived.
Wow.
And I imagined, this was like with my eyes open, doing brain spotting. I rescued all of these 11 people. I saw so many visuals. It felt like I was there in the Holocaust. And
Wow.
it so much processed through my body. And after I did that session, I had a deep, profound, like spiritual connection with my great grandfather who has passed over. And I've like it like encoded in my nervous system and my body that I am always supported, I'm always protected. And it was one of the most profound sessions I've ever experienced. I've never had that fear again about being Jewish. I'm able to
Wow.
speak on it. I'm
Yeah.
able to share about this experience, which never would have been possible years prior.
That is amazing. That thank you for, being so vulnerable and sharing that
Mhm.
with us because
Mhm.
that's just it also as you said it shows the power of if you're willing to I always say this to my clients and myself too, if you're willing to do the work and whatever that work means for you, peel back the layers and use different models of therapy outside of just your traditional because I think you mentioned somatic work with your body that we're talking about ancestral generational things if you're willing to dig deep into that part of yourself then it's amazing what you can't heal what you I mean excuse me what you
What
can
you
heal because you can't
Yes.
heal something that you don't know is there you know
Mhm.
um
Yeah, and a lot of it can show up differently for other people, right? Like we talked
yeah.
about earlier with the burning heart, it's like sensation. For other people, it's more like the story gets fired in their mind and then they feel the sensation. So everyone feels things completely in a different way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know for me, and I try to educate, people that don't understand, anxiety, and I'm like, and I always have to remind myself, I'm like, Danielle, not everybody can hear what you're thinking right now, which gives me solace and peace. But when something happens, my mind, and it's called rumination for those who don't know, who don't struggle with anxiety, like my mind and I start ruminating. And then everybody's like, well, why can't you sleep? But I'm like, because literally I'm playing like one situation over and over and over and over in my brain. And I'm like, this is why I'm like, I can't fall asleep. And it could be something over something so little that probably
Mhm.
nobody but me notices. But because I'm kind of have that hyper awareness, I'm like, oh my God, did they notice I said something that said that like that? Or, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And then I sit here and have this conversation with my inner self. And then I'm like, why am I exhausted? Because I just literally had this I ran through
10
this
minute
a million
dialogue.
times in my mind
Yeah.
in the span of an hour, you know?
Yeah, and something not enough people talk about is rumination is is okay, wait, let me catch my words. Rumination is literally just a sign that you're disconnected from your body. It's a
Mm,
defense mechanism to stop you from feeling what's in here. Because if I feel what's in here and I stay disconnected up here, that keeps me safe. That
yes.
keeps me protected. And talk therapy keeps people in this loop. Talk
Mm,
therapy, the brain and the body does not understand that we are in the present, right? When we're anxious, we are
yes.
somewhere else. And so when we're talking about our anxiety or trauma, we're actually reliving it. Our body doesn't
Yes.
understand that the
Oh, yeah,
past
we
is
are.
over. Yeah. And so this is why talk therapy can literally be re-traumatizing.
It
And
is.
so somatic therapy helps to actually rewire and heal those survival patterns and help you actually feel safer in your body. And it helps to close that trauma cycle and close that loop to where your body feels like, okay, the past is over with. Like I am safe now. And a lot of clients describe it to me as, I finally feel a sense of relief in my body. I'm able to
Mm.
take a deep breath.
Yeah, you're like
I'm
you're like
able,
you're not as tense, you can actually relax.
yes. Yes, I feel like I can finally relax now. I feel like this protector part can finally just take a back seat. I can
Yeah.
finally feel like I'm able to sleep deeper now.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point about protector parts, but also too about our brains and our so I always say this, our brains were created to keep us safe. Our nervous systems were created to keep us safe, but our bodies will tell us. Like I know sometimes that my brain will play tricks on me, right? And it'll say, it'll I know my brain's wired to go to the negative. So if I see something out in the world, it could be just like maybe a fire hydrant that I'll be like, oh my God, well, like that's like what happened? Or versus like, oh my God, that's so nice. Like now kids can play in with free water, you know what I mean? But you automatically go to like, oh my God, that's an emergency. What happened there? Even with it seeing a car
Mm-hmm.
in something out in the world, just could be something simple. And your mind will always go to the negative. So that's why, things like manifesting and positive affirmations and therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical
Mm,
behavioral therapy are so effective because it's working with this. But this,
yes.
not your body, which is your nervous system is connecting your brain and your body, the physiological, your body will
Yeah.
tell you, I've found in my experience with my own, I guess, somatic work, if I'm thinking something logically, but my body, I'm having a sensation. And I notice this mostly with people that if I'm around somebody and their energy or like I'm getting more tense, I'm like, all right, like that. I'm like, that's my body telling me, like, because your body will tell you fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. It'll go
Mm-hmm.
into those primal kind of urges. And I know if I'm around you and like maybe I'm like, I know it's my protective part coming out, but also I'm like, that's a signal for me to be like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, like I don't feel safe perhaps
Mm-hmm.
around somebody. And it's not like this dramatic thing, but I use it as a check-in to myself and use my
Mm-hmm.
emotions and my body sensations as signals. And that's what I also think people have a misconception around that. Like listen to your bodies. Like
Mm.
your body will tell you and give you a signal.
Mm.
And when your mind is telling you something totally different.
Yeah, and I want to speak more to this. I want to go back to manifesting in a bit, but I also want to talk about your body signals because even like we have something called neuroception. And so our neuroception deems whether or not love is safe or this person is safe.
Mm.
And so a lot of my clients who are anxiously attached or anxious leaning, they feel safe with toxic, emotionally unavailable, narcissistic partners. And then
Mhm.
their body, it feels dangerous to be with safe, healthy, secure partners because our neuroception has learned if I had emotionally unavailable or narcissistic parents, that's what my nervous system believes is safe. Our nervous
Yes.
system and our brain is wired for the familiar. So a
Yep.
healthy, secure partner is going to ring off alarm bells. And even like, for example, um, you can be with a very safe person, but they could even do something slightly similar or even a flavoring to maybe like with your parent. And that rings off your alarm bell.
Yep.
So even an example like um months ago. So I live with one of my best friends, and she just has a more like prominent fight response. That's just not my first response to go into. And so for me at the beginning, when I started living with her, the fight response would remind me of my dad because he would yell, he would get angry, and it's not that
Mhm.
she was unsafe or she was projecting her anger at me. It was literally just my body remembered
Yeah.
anger in the past was unsafe. And so that's like an important nuance there. And then with manifesting, not enough people talk about manifesting and trauma. Like we have to take very small steps toward our future, because we're talking about protector parts, right? Because if what I want is a successful business or a healthy relationship requires me to be vulnerable. It requires me to be
Mhm.
intimate. It requires me
Mhm.
to be seen. And if
Mhm.
in childhood that was not safe for me to be seen, that was not safe for me to be vulnerable, it was not safe to share all of me, of course your brain is going to feel terrified or
Absolutely.
unsafe. Yeah, when that comes up. And so a part of like manifesting and something I've been learning is, trauma is we have these repetitive experiences of fight or flight, of danger, of not feeling safe. And so part of manifesting when you have trauma is helping your body to feel safe in expansion, titrating it. Okay, maybe I
Mm.
can, you know, anchor in this feeling of gratitude, starting for 30 seconds, starting to help our body to feel safe in the joy, in
Yes.
the gratitude. Very, very small things. And when I started to heal a lot of my preverbal wounding, my heart, it was wild because it showed up as like tension, tightness, burning, but also it was literally expanding to hold
Oh,
bigger versions of myself, and I was able to quote unquote manifest
yes.
easier. But not enough people talk about it. They're just like, just script it out, script what you want. But if what you want, your nervous system feels is scary or unfamiliar or is ringing off these alarm bells,
Alarm
it's going to
bells,
self
yeah.
sabotage it and run away from it each time. So there's such nuance to this conversation. I'm just so glad you brought this up as well.
Well, we
Yeah.
can definitely I feel like you definitely have to come back on the podcast, like, 'cause I could talk literally a whole podcast I could talk more than one podcast about manifesting
Yeah.
and connection with the universe and just everything, but yeah, no, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. You will definitely have to come back on the show, but for
Yeah.
everybody out there, they can find you on Instagram, was it Heal with Val?
Yep, you got it.
Perfect. All right, everybody. And thank you so much for another wonderful episode of the Feeling and Healing podcast. As per usual, you can find Feeling and Healing on YouTube as well as Apple Podcast and Spotify.